Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first edition of the Wild Man Revolution podcast, vodcast, whatever you want to call it. And I have an amazing, legendary friend of mine to kick off what is going to be a value-packed first edition. Mr. Aaron Baldock from way down there in tropical Tasmania, Australia. Now, before I let Aaron talk, as I'm totally in control of the Wild Man Revolution, I'll let him talk soon. Aaron is an amazing man. He does amazing things on the planet. He's definitely helped me on my journey. You could call it awakening, spiritual awakening, being like a good person. He's definitely been my go-to for a lot of things. And he is a way shower of Christ consciousness, which in itself is like, this is what you know what you're in for, guys. Wild Man Revolution. A teacher of divine union, which is so important, and something that I think has definitely been lacking massively across humanity's history, her story for a long time. And he's a dreamweaver. And I think that speaks for itself too. And for me, again, just an all-round fucking legend who, if I've got something that I'm stuck on, I know that he's not going to be like your probably normal knockabout mate that's just going to tell you what you want to hear. He generally tells me what I don't want to fucking hear, and it's generally bang on. So without too much more of me talking, Aaron, man, welcome to the Wild Man Revolution podcast. How you feeling?
Awesome, man. Thank you. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here. And yeah, I'm really excited for sharing the truth and exploring the awakening and what Christ consciousness means and why it's important for people to have, an understanding. And yeah, let's get wild.
Absolutely. Let's get So for all you tuning in, of course, for the first time, because it hasn't been done before, Wild Man Revolution, it's going to be a collective of podcasts of all different men that I've connected with. Some I'm friends with, some have just come into my life, some I've looked up to in the past, some are successful in their own ways. But the whole premise of it is to just have a really casual chat, talk about solutions in the world, things that we're good at, our genius zone, and to show you men of the world and you women out there that there are amazing men doing amazing things right now when we are in perceived to be chaotic times. But I know for me, I'm probably living the best days of my life right now. And how about you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I absolutely am. On many levels I'm living my dream life and have such blessings and abundance and a really fulfilling life. And, it hasn't been an easy ride to get here. I've had to go through several initiations and surrender and trust to a higher guidance and my own soul guidance to be able to get here. And many times it didn't make sense. And there was times my family thought I was going crazy, or, people around me just couldn't comprehend what I was feeling and sensing and knowing. It went beyond the mind. It came from a deeper place. And so I wanted to kick off the podcast by just bringing some attention to your intention of the Wild Man Revolution. And I thought I might bring the teacher of contrast. And if we're looking at wild man, what isn't wild? I was thinking of this before when I woke up this morning. So I was like, well, to me, wild, the opposite of that, the contrast to that is captivity. And I think, modern captivity is suburbia. It's this social matrix that we find ourselves in. And to me, I feel most free and at peace when I'm really connected to the earth, when I'm connected to my heart and my purpose. And as a man, that's just so important. And, we move into the man. And to me, as men, our role at this time is to bring the divinity to man as we move out of the patriarchal age and conditioning. And we move into the new paradigm, which, in my opinion, is going to be the holyarchy, men and women side by side in their wholeness. And I'm going to speak to this wholeness. and bringing through the divine masculine, which to me is about strength. It's about integrity, truth, humility, and justice. And then we move into the revolution, and I'll bring in a bit of contrast again. What is the opposite? What's the contrast of revolution? It's compliance. It's following what has already been done and always has been that laid path set before us. It's going along with the status quo. And within the word revolution, we've got evolution. And this is what is on offer for those of us that have the courage to actually step out of the status quo and to evolve and to come into that wholeness and to step forth and connect with the earth, who is a living sentient being. She has her own wisdom and intelligence and consciousness. And when we can tap into that earthly wisdom, it will tap us back into our true nature. And from this, we can evolve and revolutionize this social construct that we call society into something that actually benefits the whole rather than just a select few.
Just got a huge confirmation why I wanted you as my first guest, brother. Like that just sums it up so well. And giving it, I think this is one thing I've appreciated as our relationship's grown, is like the way you have clarity and communication of your understanding of things and how you process things, but then you're able to speak it into words. Like, I think that's a big part of my journey that I continue to I don't know, like tune into how you do go about that. It's something that I really appreciate about you, because it's definitely a big thing that I've been working on. And for everyone listening, again, there's probably a dozen tangents that we could go off just from that. But again, for me, and why you've just really told the audience why Wild Man Revolution. When it first come to me, it's like, wow, man, like I literally handle venomous, dangerous snakes in the wild. I literally go out into nature to unplug, to connect in. Exactly what I don't follow the status quo. I do things naturally from my own wild, because I get that, because my number one value really is probably freedom. So, and that's how I do it, but I'm a bit wild in it. So when I was thinking about this, I'm like, well, that's my version of wild. That's my version of me being a man, but feeling whole. And these some of the things that I do that might be perceived as a bit wild. And it's also, again, going against the status quo, going out of there, like revolting, not against it, just doing my own thing, being my own man, being my own person. I'm not going against anything. I'm not this. I think when people hear revolution, it's like, let's fight. For me, it's just like, everyone wants to go that way. I'm fucking off this way. Pre-warning, if you've got kids around too, I swear a lot and I encourage it.
I probably will drop a few F-bombs as well. Yeah, I love that, Stephen. You know, I've just hit the ripe old age of 30, and it's allowed me to reflect on my 20s, and you know, once I left school, it was like the chains were like taken off, and I was like, finally had the capacity and ability to make autonomous decisions for myself. And I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school, but I knew one thing, that I was not going to do a job that I hated. I knew that within the cells of my being. I was like, I'm not doing that. And so thankfully, I give so much gratitude to my parents who encouraged me to travel. And this is what led me to start to unravel a lot of that conditioning that I received as a child and as an adolescent, because what that allowed me to do was start to follow my intuition, where my soul was guiding me, even though I had no conception, no awareness. I was not spiritual at all. All I cared about was partying. All I cared about was getting with girls. That was my priority. And that led me to go on several hero's journeys, where I entered into the abyss. I entered into the wildness, the unknown. And I traveled overseas, and I had an experience of what it was like to have autonomy in me making the decisions on how I spent my day. And that for me has been one of my priorities. And I'm going to tie this into what we have as a social matrix, that most people are plugged into a job where they're told what to do. And this is just something that goes against so much of what I stand for and live for. And it was in having that autonomy and that ability to follow my intuition that it led to my awakening. I was living in London. I just turned 21. And it was just about to hit 2012. And there was a series of events that unfolded within the matter of a couple of months. One was that I hit rock bottom in terms of my partying just getting out of hand. And I actually had an experience where I took drug taking too far to the point where it risked my life. Around that same time, I also watched a documentary. It was called Zeitgeist, and it just outlined how the banking system worked and 9/11 and a few other concepts. And that just totally rocked my foundations of what I considered to be society and normal and real. And it confirmed what I innately knew about the system, and that I didn't want to be a part of it because it's set up in a way to drain our life force. It's a system of enslavement, and it's been architected that way. And I had that experience. And then within a couple of months, I also had my first psychedelic trip on mushrooms in Amsterdam. And that's where I saw the energetic nature of reality. And I could see with my own eyes that everything is energy. Yeah. And so I was also really went deep on my reflection, because I was starting to really observe that when I embarked on my hero's journey, not that I called it this, but when I followed my intuition and I pushed through my fears, like to travel overseas, I didn't know where I was going to land. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to stay. And I had all this anxiety. But when I pushed through that and did it anyway, I was rewarded for it with really meaningful relationships. I made some amazing friends, and I just had the most incredible experiences in terms of like making the most of my youth, and just so much aliveness of living life. It was amazing. And so I recognized that there was this sort of pattern unfolding in my life, as well as awakening to the outer reality. I was awakening that there was something going on within me, that there was something guiding me to a better life. And I just had to keep trusting it. And ever since that time, Steve, I've just continued to trust my intuition, to trust where my feelings and my soul was guiding me. And life has continued to expand and deepen. And my soul blueprint is one of to be here as an anchor for universal father energy. So that's part of the sacred masculine, the divine masculine, to bring through the truth. And the truth is that we are God consciousness. We are all aspects of the one infinite creator. And when we actually embody this, then why would we ever hate another if it's a reflection of the truth of who we are? And this is where truth and love are synonyms. And this is the embodiment of what is known as Christ consciousness. It's a level of consciousness. It's a level of understanding. It's a level of awareness. And this is where truth comes in, because truth goes beyond the mind. And I had a friend reach out to me really confused as to what is the truth. What's the truth right now? And we're in an information.
Don't expect the right one answer for that at the right time.
We're going through World War III, and it's a covert war. It's an information war, and the truth is getting harder and harder to distinguish for those people that are stuck in their mind, stuck in linear thinking, stuck in left brain thinking. What is being asked of us is to incorporate our right brain that can see the bigger picture, that's more intuitive. And because truth is a vibration, it's a frequency, we can feel it. And the more we're tapped into the different levels and dimensions of our being, you know, the left brain, the logical side being one aspect, but we've got our heart intelligence, we've got our intuition, we've got our right brain capacity for creativity and big picture thinking. And it's about incorporating and embodying all of that. And the more we are tapped into these different dimensions and aspects of who we are, the more we can discern the truth, because we can actually feel it. We feel something's not quite right. People don't bullshit me, Steve, because I can feel when someone's lying to me. And this is why I can be such an amazing coach or facilitator, because a lot of people are in denial about their own lives, and they might say, yeah, you know, things are good.
Yeah. So some might call it the bullshit radar.
Yeah. I've just developed my own bullshit radar, and that's, you know, due to me living my truth, speaking my truth.
Yeah.
I could keep going, but I just sort of want
to. No. It's cool.
Back to you.
I'm not going to pull all of that apart because it's all relevant and it's all like super powerful. But I think there's some really, really big things that you've just shared with people listening that they actually need to listen to again. What I see manifest at the moment is this. It's been labeled as the Great Awakening, and people think that it's the awakening. They've woken up to being lied to, or the stuff, like I say, that they think that's that outer awakening, and they think that's it, and they're stuck in it. And this has been my journey too, because I knew about so much of this shit probably around 2012. Like, my memory of that time isn't as good. I wasn't really awake, but I was aware of the banking stuff. I was aware of certain other elements before I had any. I didn't even know what a fucking coach was back then. But I knew shit wasn't right in the world. I had some sort of inner knowing too, and it led me down this path for the outer information. So realistically, it's like I prepared myself up until the last couple of years, and I've just been walking around going, yeah, of course this is happening on the outside, because I've been really focused on my inner journey, and then go, oh yeah, something feels off. And then I'm getting the confirmations on the outside that, oh, this is what I'm feeling. This is out. But again, manifesting society right now, and I speak to this a lot right now, stop focusing on the information on the outside. And like, everyone wants to say, I'm awaking, I'm fucking woke, more like it, your diet woke. And can you talk to that a little bit more about how you've come back to the inner journey? Yeah,
absolutely, Steve. And this, I'm so glad you've brought this up. I've been meaning to share my truth around this, because you're so right. People think, because they're waking up to the fact that there's corruption and there's evil in the world and the system is rigged, and, you know, the Freemasons are the architects of the matrix, and it's all out there, and it's all this, you know, like battle, and there's conflict and there's war, and it's just a polarity to anyone that's still stuck in that matrix thinking, that's still in the status quo. If you're, you know, awakening to the corruption and evil in the world is like only the entry level to what's really going on and who we really are. And that's the key. This is an inner game. You got to realize that this outer reality is a manifestation of what's going on internally. And if all that information and everything like that is creating conflict and chaos and war within yourself, then you're just going to continually manifest that in your life and your relationships. And this is why we need to have an understanding of what's really going on here at a consciousness level, at a really high perspective. I'm talking like cosmic perspective. Like, let's zoom right out and remember like just how infinite the universe is, and that there's a great mystery. And so when I look to discern the truth, I bring in these universal concepts, one of which being the yin yang symbol, and that there is light and dark, and that there's a role and a purpose to evil. Now, if we could only make good decisions, if we could only ever speak the truth, would we ever have free will? No. So we're in a free will experiment. where we have the capacity to lie. We have the capacity to hurt another. We have the choice to do wrong and to do evil. And this gives us the capacity to have free will. And so rather than going into like judgment and condemnation and resistance and pushback to those evil forces in the world, we realize that they are playing a divine purpose. And this isn't to spiritually bypass, it's to stop being in conflict with it and to start doing our own inner work, because we've also got that evil within us. And I feel called to bring in, for those that are watching or listening, rather, I'm showing my tattoo. Now, on my arm, I've got a Kundalini serpent, so a rainbow serpent. And right at the bottom of the serpent is a black, dark tongue. And this is symbolic that the darkness is within us. And if we truly want to create change and we truly want to awaken, we've got to address the darkness and evil within us. Yeah. And that will have a ripple effect through the collective consciousness of humanity, remembering again that we're all one manifestation, and that the more we purify our own self to be more loving expressions, to be more whole, to be more balanced in our ego and soul, masculine, feminine, left brain, right brain. This is the great work that's being asked of us now. And yeah,
I think, like I say, I see it manifest more. It's almost like people are, okay, now I've woken up to what's going on the inside, and they're afraid to look at what's on the inside because it's so chaotic out there. They can feel like they're unease. I say everyone's caught in a trauma loop right now. That's what I keep saying as I put it out. They're cycling through the same thing. They're in fight or flight. They're either fighting with what they've found on the outside, or they're like, it's there, so I'm afraid to do anything with that. I'm definitely afraid to go within here. This is my new normal. I'm just going to deal with this loop. Like in communities online, like all the truth communities and all this, I see the next level as the control, because it's still keeping you outside of yourself. And I feel going back to, like, I know on my own journey where it is sometimes, you say we've got evil on the inside. For me, when I actually shine a light on that, or I feel something, whether it's something in a plant medicine journey or something that comes up, or something that I just unconsciously do or say in the relationship, it's like, holy shit, it's like, that's not me. But having the courage and being vulnerable, if it's with other people, or having the courage to look at that and then go there, that's what people need right now. This is not courageous fucking sharing an article. It's not courageous saying, I know what's going on with the government and blah, 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 blah. What's courageous is, okay, pause all that stuff. That stuff's there. What's going on here? You want to do what to Scott Morrison?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, and it's the darkness, but it's like, what I found from going into the darkness, man, the more I go into that darkness, the more I heal, the more I'm vulnerable, or more I'm willing to go in there and actually face it and feel it and work through it and not analyze it as much. I like moving through shit. The more I like move through stuff, what goes on the outside, it's almost like I go to a different room in the house. There's a fight going on outside. I'm watching the fight, like, fuck you, I'm on your side, this. And whoa, that feels good. I'll go to another room, do my healing or whatever, and I'll come out, the fight's still going on, but I'm like, they're just working through something. Go for it.
Yeah. And let's bring to the conversation the role of pain, because, you know, this ties in with this concept of evil and the necessity.
Men, listen up, because most of the men listening right now, if you've either got motivated in life, it's because of pain, or if you're keeping yourself where you are, you're probably not in enough pain. There's another way. But anyway, you keep going. What you're doing.
Let's just say there's a hot stove and you touch the hot stove and it hurts. You pull away. So pain serves a purpose to show you that there's something that's incongruent with manifesting more life force, or because if we look at even the word evil spelt back, it's live. So anything that's anti-life. So if we're experiencing pain, then it's to bring attention to something that's within us that needs attention. And so again, all this evil that's being brought to the forefront, it's always been there, but it's being brought to the forefront for us to see. And it's creating a lot of pain for people, because that pain is what they need to bring attention to so they can evolve, and that pain might be fear. And fear is a low bandwidth of vibration and frequency and keeps us in a really low state of consciousness. And part of the fear program is to keep us thinking that it's to keep us in survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we're trying to preserve this body, and then we can justify and rationalize doing evil things, either for self-preservation or for the greater good. So, I'm bringing this forth because it's so important, either whether you're awakening to corruption or you're starting to awaken to the fact that there's a causal relationship between your inner world, what you think and feel, and what manifests in your life. So, the awakening is multi-dimensional. And this is what's being asked of us at the moment.
It is. And I've sort of gone away from this is a great awakening. If I'm talking about it or speaking about it, it's, for me, the awakening is to what's on the inside, whether it is what you've just shared or your true power. And that's what I'm big on, is activating or helping men really tap into, go within, into that true power. And what I find is most men that I work with, especially, they don't remember feeling that power. They don't remember feeling.
Yeah.
So it's that remembering that's happening too. So it's not really an awakening, it's a great remembering.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the forgetting was part of the cycle of awake and sleep. Again, to bring in some cosmic awareness or some higher consciousness understanding that everything is reflected, just like we have a sleep and awaken night and day. Humanity has been in a state of sleep, and it hasn't always been like this. If you look at even Egypt, they were clearly using some sort of technology that we don't use right now. They clearly had some understanding about spirit and, gods that we don't have an understanding right now. And we can sort of pass it off or ignore it. But they were doing something back then that we don't do right now, or haven't done up until now.
Yeah.
And so this idea that that consciousness, evolution is some sort of linear progression, that's a falsehood. The truth is that consciousness awakens and goes back to sleep. We wake and go back to sleep, and we are on the precipice of a big awakening. And if we want to bring it into a metaphor of us getting woken up by an alarm, say we've been in a really deep sleep, and then we've got the alarm right next to our head, and it goes, and it's, oh shit, you wake up and you're like, oh, you look around, and I know when I'm woken up like that, sometimes I don't even know what room I'm in, and I'm just I'm trying to and this is what we're going through as a collective. We're like, oh shit, we're waking up, and oh shit, there's all this evil and corruption and this tyranny, and there's these forces that want to harvest my soul, and it's fuck. But if you've done your inner work, and you actively doing shadow work, and facing your fears and honoring the truth as a man, we need to honor the truth in every aspect of our life. And the best way we can do that is in our relationships. We'll transform ourselves by doing this. And so we're awakening, we're remembering the truth. And truth will set you free, but first will probably piss you off.
Yeah, agreed. I'm gonna drop some mushroom stuff in here. I had a great journey the other night. I've actually been working with them a bit lately, which has been really, really interesting. And it's one of the ones that plant medicines that I really Yeah, it's like I'm just diving deeper into it, very conscious. I've been diving into a lot of Bernard Gunther's work, past work and everything like that, and it's really helped ground me with my own work. But I was sitting by the fire the other day. It's fascinating, and I was out in the bush by myself, wild man totally, out there by myself, and I was sitting by the fire, and I was sitting with the fire, and there I was looking at the embers, and I was like watching it dull down and light up, and I was like, oh, is remembering. It's like this fire, this pulse that kept going. And I was sitting, like what you were explaining about how we're going through this. I was sitting there, and who knows how many hours for, time wasn't real, but I was just watching this fire pulsate. It was like it was going out and it was waking up, but when it was waking up, it was really bright and really powerful. And then a flame had come out. Then I was tripping off and going, well, flames have no shadow and all this sort of shit. But it was, but that was just profound for me. I just sat with that. I'm like, for me, it was what you were describing then. Like, this is humanity. This is me. Yeah. Like, yeah. Here I am. And it even comes in, I see it in like cycles. Like, you might wake up to one thing on the outside. And if you are doing the inner work, body work and everything too, and you're aligning that as you go and integrating it, then there's another level. And it's like this pulsation where you can even almost go into like, oh, I know everything now. And then next minute, another alarm goes off. I'm like, what the fuck? Huh? That's that and that's this. Have you experienced that more quickening too? Yeah.
Absolutely. And, as we ascend, what's true on one level of the game isn't necessarily true on the next. And that doesn't mean if you ascend and you're now at this new bandwidth of frequency, this new level of consciousness, it doesn't mean what down here isn't true. It just means you've gone to a new level of truth. And this is what is really hard for some people to comprehend and to actually transcend the idea of right and wrong. And it's actually like, quite often in order to transcend and go to that new level of consciousness, we've got to go through an ego death where we've got to like actually face maybe I've been completely wrong this whole fucking time. I know I've been through that, like where I've had so much certainty for like, this is it, this is what I'm here for, this is what I'm doing. And then it all just crumble away and just like, oh, fuck, maybe I've been wrong. And then just like having to face, like, just let go of my ego's care of what people think of me. And I'm just gonna have to let it go. And just, this is the continual evolution of like, and often at those early stages of awakening, we'll take on a spiritual ego and that we know better. And these fucking awake, sheeple and people like they just don't get it. And we get it. Like, look at us. And I know I've been through this. Like,
same. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it pops up for me every now and then. If I've got something going on in the inside, before I know it, I'm passing, like, I'm okay to judge, but it's the follow through from the judgment. Like, I'll see something and I need to make a judgment on it. Like, that's how we actually discern. But if I find I follow on from that judgment and it's like, you're fucking idiot for this, like you're asleep. And I notice that and it'll continue and I'll catch it a couple of times like, whoa, what's going on? Not with there. Nothing's changed on the outside. It's like, what's shifting here? And generally then what I'll find, then I'll have emotion come up as soon as I pause that. And then I get to go to work. I'm having that happen frequently, but the cool thing is the more frequently it's happening, the quicker I'm able to catch it, the quicker I'm like, something's going on in here. And I think that's an important thing for men and women to understand. If you're really committed to growth and work, doesn't mean that the healing's going to be messy forever, but the work continues.
Yeah.
I think that's something absolutely. I want to share. Yeah, the work always continues. It's and I'm actually okay with that now. I never used to be. I'm like, I've already healed from this. Why the fuck is this still coming up? Why does that still trigger me?
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe things come up again because we are actually at a new level of consciousness, and this dynamic, this program, this pattern has come up again for us to gain a new depth of wisdom from whatever that was. For me, something I've been continually dealing with is like body shame and body issues that, I'm too skinny, and it will come up again. And I'm like, fuck, I fucking thought I've worked through this, but there'll be a new bit of wisdom for me to gain from it. Yeah. And this idea that we transcend and we never get triggered, I think it's more that we actually relate and respond to the triggers in much better ways, rather than acting them out, or we, just got to remove ourselves. We just become more refined at breathing it in and just letting it out, and just learning to respond rather than react. And that's also a real sign of maturity, because what we've been asked here, and I love this quote, I'm pretty sure it was Ken Wilber that brought it forth. We've not just got to wake up, we've got to grow up, we've got to clean up, and then we've got to show up. And for me, that is so true, because cleaning up is about, like, again, purifying our consciousness, doing our shadow work, healing our inner child wounds and enmeshment patterns or narcissism, whatever it is. We've got to grow up, and that's like taking full responsibility, and that becoming autonomy, becoming sovereign, and then showing up and actually bringing what we have healed in ourselves, or what we can see needs to change in the world. We've got to show up and serve and be in service to others.
Yeah. And I think the showing up part of that, a lot of men are showing up right now, but it's in a distorted way, because there's a lack of responsibility or personal responsibility in their life, or they've come from a place where they've got healing, or the modeling they've had in their life of other men, other women, and that they still feel that that's the way. So when they're showing up in life, they wonder why they're not feeling full, they're not feeling whole, and they're not feeling good enough or anything, because there's just pieces of that. Like, I've got a course running at the moment, and I'm very sneaky with this, but transparent. So it's not sneaky at all, but I've called it How to Get the Important Shit Done in Life. But it's basically about the first two things that you mentioned. That's what it's about. But a lot of men out there, if you're listening, you mightn't understand this yet, but for me, personal responsibility, it's number one. Like, taking responsibility of everything, not just external, internal. If you don't do that, no matter what action you take, you're going to get challenges on the way. You're going to get your dragons show up, so to say. You're going to have to fight them again and again and again. Or you're going to wonder why. Again, you don't feel fulfilled or whole, or you feel like it's hard all the time or that. But if you go back to, for me, level one, take responsibility, everything changes from that point. Everything. It's easy to go, yeah, well, okay. And it's not my fault, but it's like, I'm just responsible. I actually think it's
exactly
invalid. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, a lot of our trauma and our shitty conditioning isn't our fault, but it is our responsibility to do something with it.
Yeah, I look at relationships. You mentioned relationships before, and I think a lot of men I work with now, they'll come to me, and one of the things they're at the effect of a previous relationship, because it's like, she was this, she did that, all that. And when I just drop it in there, I'm like, cool. If you want to go forward, this man, yeah, she might have been all these things, but you're responsible for how you feel, and you're responsible from that point on of how you view it or what you make it mean.
Yeah,
scares a lot of men hearing that, because one of their go-tos is like, but it wasn't my fault. It's not about that.
Yeah. The relationship's a big one. Obviously, well, not obviously, but yeah, for those that know me know that my relationship with my beloved Greer is the main container for our spiritual growth. And that has required me to take full responsibility of what I'm feeling, and to also trust that she can handle what I'm bringing forth as my truth. And, early on in our relationship, I had this real fear that I couldn't control my sexual energy, and that I was going to somehow act that out and maybe cheat on her or whatever. And I had to be so honest with her about that. And in being honest with her and taking responsibility for it, I actually have gone in and have worked so much on clearing out the distortions around my sexual energy, to the point now where I'm just fully embodied in my power and my sexual energy. And recognizing that if I'm feeling, turned on or whatever by a woman, it's not her form, it's her essence, it's the divine feminine that I'm finding attraction to. And that way I can just breathe in and cultivate that energy. And relationships can be our biggest container for true healing and true growth, like at a really deep, profound level. And it requires us to make that commitment to the truth, which is taking responsibility for what's going on, and then having the capacity to be strong enough to also be vulnerable in it. And so the responsibility is such an important part in healthy transformational relationship dynamics.
Something powerful you mentioned there when you were like working through this and aware of the sexual energy thing and that part, something you shared about having trust in yourself, sharing your truth with Greer. And Greer's amazing. Like she has been amazing for me on my journey, just like you have. I can't imagine the container sometimes when you're working through your stuff, and it's pretty similar to Chi and I. It can get intense because we're constantly building this trust in ourselves to be able to say, hey, this is me, be vulnerable, and this is me. This is what I've got going on. But then also as a man, what I find for a lot of men, trust is a big thing. They don't feel safe in a relationship. They've been hurt before. They've got their, wherever it's come from. So that vulnerability piece, it's like, oh, but I loved how you broke it down. Having trust in yourself to go to Greer and say, this is my truth about this right now. It's not my truth fucking forever. I don't know. It's just how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. And part of me was saying, I know it's not my whole truth, but there's an aspect of me that's feeling this. But a deeper part of me knows I'm in love with you, knows I'm committed, but I've just got this and I was able to sort of not wholly identify with this energy that was in me. It was more like, there's this, I had a nickname for this aspect. I forget. I think it was called the Mozzie or something, because he just wanted to like fuck everyone. I'd just say the Mozzie's up, and I'd share
a lot of my previous mates were Mozzies then.
But I also just, you shared the thing around, there's a bit of a stigma, and I know that stigma's been worked through at a collective around men being vulnerable. But honestly, and I get this feedback so often by women, like I'm in circles and groups and healing groups where I just, I share vulnerability. I've just worked that muscle to the point where for me, like vulnerability is one of the most manly things you can do, because you're committing to the truth. And when you're doing that, you got such strong integrity, and it takes a lot of strength to not, give a fuck of the outcome of you really speaking and sharing your truth and having the courage to reveal your emotions and those parts of you that you feel unlovable. Like strength, integrity, truth, like there's so much masculine energy in being emotionally vulnerable.
I think you mentioned, and it's been similar to my journey, a lot of like you're doing a lot of circles and everything, but even a lot of traveling and everything I've done around the world, a lot of the events, retreats, immersions, ceremonies and all that, I've been generally one of the only men out of a big group of women all the time. And early on, apart from early on when we started, like it was all men stuff, but early on from there, I knew what you just said there. I felt it by just getting super vulnerable. And what I found by being vulnerable around women, it taught me, not only did I have a lot of hurt and everything I was carrying on around previous relationships, even unconscious stuff, but when I started doing this, the feedback I was getting, the support I was getting, how safe I felt, how held I felt energetically when I was getting vulnerable, I was like, this is the shit. This is, why the fuck aren't these places filled with men being vulnerable? And I feel we're getting there. I feel we are getting there. And again, one of the intentions of this podcast is to show men out there, there's a whole heap of us that have sort of where we've been in this work, or we've been this way, what we're talking about now for a long time, not better than anyone else, but we're understanding this. We're understanding that we're not waiting for men to wake up. There's so many of us are. Just because, like, how do I say this? Just because my journey, I've been surrounded by a lot of women. I've seen this shift happen in the last couple of years where it's really changed. But back to the point, before I go off on a tangent, what you're saying now and what I'm sharing now, my journey, my experience there, as soon as I felt that, now, man, if I've got shit going on, if I hit the little voice in my head going, oh, don't say that just in case or whatever, I'm like, I'm out. Here it is. I bear all, be it intimate relationship with Chi. Sometimes it's really hard to express stuff because it's like, oh, how's she going to react, respond? I'm like, just wipe it. Just get it out there. Or open platform, open area if it's an environment in a group of friends. And I've been tested on this massively this year. Like boundaries and things like this where I get to express and get vulnerable around being in my power now. So it's like these levels. But I love go back into the relationship again because you got a really interesting dynamic.
I do. I want to go back there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share that, like, and I'm glad that you've had that experience of being the only man, because the feedback I get is just how much women appreciate it. Like,
I'm the shit in that. Yeah.
But
I went in my head a bit.
Let's also go back to that point you were saying around, like, why men may not feel, here's the key word, safe to do that in relationship. And quite often it's because a woman, because there's an enmeshed, a codependent relationship, a woman, she is projecting her masculine onto the man, and her sense of safety and her needs being met by the man outside of her. When he feels vulnerable, she doesn't feel safe and then she may, and look, I know this dynamic because Greer and I do couples counseling. And if a woman gets triggered by a man's vulnerability, then he's going to shut it down. So the woman actually needs to have a capacity and ability to hold space for the man. And she does that by clearing out her own fears and meeting her own needs and embodying a sense of her own inner masculine. And this is why I say wholeness, men and women side by side in their wholeness, men embodying their feminine nature, their intuitive capacity, their capacity to nurture and be loving and kind and soft and gentle. And also women cultivating self-responsibility, meeting their own needs and whatnot. And I'm, not a feminist type. Like, that's a whole distortion and a whole topic of conversation. It's a woman who's got that capacity to embody the masculine energy, but not to negate her own feminine. And the same with the man. Like, he can tap in and express his emotions, but they don't overpower him. They don't they don't run the show. He can. And this is that balance, like balancing both polarities within us is what creates that wholeness. And this is where we evolve to become, divinely sovereign, divinely whole, balanced, yin and yang. And this is why relationships are so important. Like, intimate relationships can be, if people have the knowledge, the understanding of what a trigger is, how to take responsibility, how to effectively communicate. And this is where Greer and I are so functional in our relationship, because we've really mastered the art of communication. And part of how we've done that is when we were first together and things were starting to get triggered, we'd often preface the conversation with saying, like, well, we called it a leading edge, like a growing edge, like this is sort of out of my comfort zone. And what that would do is allow the other person just to know, okay, this could get a bit clunky, this could trigger me. And it would just sort of like, just sort of wave the flag of neutrality of, and it would put the other person just to take a breath and rest their nervous system. Or You know, I'll go back to that thing around, you know, when I was sharing stuff around my sexuality, I'd preface saying, you know, I'm really concerned in me sharing this, that it's going to trigger your shame and your not enoughness, but I've got to share it because it's my truth. And so that would sort of just give Greer a heads up, like, you know, I don't want to share this because it's probably going to trigger your shame, trigger your not enoughness, but you know, we're both so committed to truth. We're both so committed to healing that, you know, I've got to share this.
And again, going back to the vulnerability and going about that, the vulnerability is a muscle. And I think you mentioned that earlier. You got to build it. It's not a one-off thing. We go, oh, I did that and she didn't kick me out or she didn't throw shit at me and all that. And I think this is where a lot of men, they'll do something once and they're like, oh, that was okay. But I love the communication. If men are going to work on one thing out there right now, if there's other things, but if you can be a better listener, communicator in any relationship, that is going to totally transform your life. And I'm talking from listening to what's going on the inside first, listening to your body, not just listening to the random thoughts in your head, but then listening to other people in your life, especially into relations. That's helped me a lot. And I love how you talk about prefacing a communication with Greer or anything. Chi and I are getting a lot better in that, but it's like this building the muscle of it. It's almost like being more vulnerable or feeling more safe so it can be a more open conversation. Sometimes I've got to say, don't fucking talk to me right now. I'm going out to move my body or anything like that. But we've got this understanding what that means now versus before. It's like, oh, what, don't you want to share with me? Don't you trust me? Or whatever's going on inside. And we've had them conversations. But again, we've been together now, I think, nearly 5 years. This has been a work in progress.
Yep.
Going back to that, we're sweet now. We've healed from that. But then all of a sudden, the other day, we had a plate. I cracked it about a plate in the fridge. Lost my shit. Like, but what we dug into was similar sort of stuff from we've worked on before. But because we'd worked on the communication, when we were like, wait a sec, hey, we're fucking going on about a plate, both of us. Can we step outside?
What's this really about?
Can we sit down and chat about this? Look at us go.
Yeah.
And then it was still vulnerable. It was still, for me, some of the stuff that I was sharing was like, oh, shit, this makes me feel uncomfortable. Some of the stuff Chi was sharing was really hard. But it's that preface, that part where you feel it, where you actually go, yeah, you know what? I trust myself more. I trust myself more to be held or be supported or be heard. And I trust that I'm going to be heard.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a muscle. And just like any sort of movement in the gym, the first time you pick up that dumbbell or you go to do a deadlift, and you've never done it before, your form's going to be shit. You're going to be lifting really light. Like it takes time. It takes practice. And you're exactly right. That key word of being trust. You trust yourself, you trust your partner, and you trust the process because you've been through it. And you just build that skill set. And I feel called to just bring in, again, a bit of a higher perspective of why this is so important, because in order for us to evolve, we've got to release the old and release the density so that we can evolve into higher light beings. And that density is our trauma, it's our shame, it's our fear. And when we're being triggered in relationship, that's the universe, that's life conspiring to push that density out of our cellular memory, out of our DNA, out of our emotional body, out of our mental programming, because life is pushing us at the moment. We're going through going through that birth canal, and we're being forced to cleanse and release. And we're not just releasing our own this lifetime, we're releasing on behalf of our ancestors. We're releasing like karmic on so many levels, and it's not always going to make sense. Like I love that you shared about the plate. It reminded me of when Greer and I were at a business mastermind, and I went and made myself a cup of tea, and I didn't make her one. And oh, talk about a trigger. Like, it was massive. Like, and it wasn't just this is the thing. Most unconscious couples in dysfunctional relationship dynamics and patterns, they stay on that surface level where it's about the cup of tea. But when you're in this engagement of conscious relationship and consciously evolving and being willing to look at the dark and evil within to clear it out in order to ascend and evolve, then you know it's not about the plate. You know it's not about the cup of tea. There's something deeper at play here. There's a child that was neglected. There was a child that was forgotten or didn't get their needs met.
Yeah.
You know,
wasn't heard. That's been one of my big ones on my journey. The plate was about me not being heard, but at the same time, in me wanting to be heard, I wasn't available to listen. And that's what it was about. It was fascinating. 6:30 in the morning. It's like both of each other like, hey, fucking get out of my house. And then they brought up other shit about, wait, this is my house. I'm like, whoa, okay. It's clearly not about a plate. We even laughed. We went from this like wanting to go, to, hey. But we usually use a story of the jar of the lid of the mayonnaise in the fridge. Who left it off? And then we get into this backwards and forwards. And again, a lot of couples will stay on that surface. They still want to find out so they can pin, like, you left the lid off the mayonnaise jar. But it's like, all right, what's in the fucking jar? Why is that so important? What's been let out? What's ready to come out? Or what's ready to be spilled? What's going to be messy? And a lot of couples, I feel, because maybe whatever's going on, there could be so many different dynamics. If they really just had the courage to sort of trust a bit more, trust why they're together, and build that trust in the relationship at the same time, I feel that can be reflected in self-trust. I think that it starts there, but again, I think you can build it in there without becoming codependent on it. I know that's been definitely my journey with Chi too. It's like, it's not always we're both triggered. Sometimes it's just me. Sometimes it's just her. Sometimes she's totally trusting and I'm just being a dick and I don't trust anything that's happening. And fucking the world's unfolding and the apocalypse is here. But it's definitely fascinating. I love how you talk about the container too of the relationship. Because it's like there's stuff that goes on in that container that you probably can't grow through anywhere else. It's like,
absolutely. It's
like when a newborn comes into the world, and I wanted to touch on this. Again, I wanted to go a little bit more into family because but I know for me, like you've got a different journey than me with like your I don't know how you would describe your family like right now with Greer, but I know for me when I had River, when he came into the world, it wasn't an ego death. I literally felt like I left my body and I had to start again, so to say, in a great way, but it was fucking scary. It was unknown. And the timing of it, of course, was everything. But I'd love to hear more about you, how you've gone there. Yeah, the relationship with Greer, but explain a bit more about that.
Sure, yeah. So, we've got like an extended family. I'm stepfather, bonus parent to Sophia.
Oh, I love that, bonus parent. That's cool as.
The idea of like a parent or stepdad, it's got such a stigma to it. And in my experience, releasing myself of that title and the unconscious expectations of that has been so goddamn liberating. When I see myself as one of the girls' guardians, it allows me to honor where I'm at, because that has been one of the most healing dynamics I've faced. When the girls came into my life, they were so loving and so open and accepting of me, and it was so much for me. Like, it brought up so much of my own inner child stuff and my own relationships with my step parents and the divorce of my parents. Like, all this stuff was just getting triggered constantly, and my heart goes out to all bonus parents everywhere, because it is such a difficult dynamic to navigate, but it has been the most rich in terms of my own inner child healing. I'd say my relationship with Greer has balanced out my masculine and feminine, but in terms of inner child healing, being a bonus parent triggered all that in me, and it's been very challenging at times, but it's prepared me to be a father for my son Kaizen, and that is such a gift, because I've done such I'm just going to own it. Like,
fucking oath, man, you got to.
Yeah, dude. I've done such an incredible, deep healing journey in the lead up to prepare me to be a father for this boy. And he is an absolute light being. He's full of just light.
Yeah.
And I know that part of Sophia and Pell's role was to come into my life to trigger all my inner child wounds, to prepare me to be a son for Kaizen. And that's not to say I haven't been triggered at times with becoming a father. Like, yes, I've had feelings of being powerless and useless, and like, what's my role in trying to help Greer, but the baby only wants to be with the mother, and me trying to fix and do. And and I've spoken with a few fathers around like this idea that we're moving out of the patriarchal energy, and part of that, transcending that and moving through that, is really going deep on what it means to be a provider. And if we're living at that surface level of life, living in our ego, then we're going to think, and it's so common that we think that all we have to provide is material and that's enough. But it's not. Like, the gift I've been given is a circumstance, like my outer reality, like, has facilitated the capacity where I am at home. I'm a stay-at-home father, and I'm providing so much presence, so much love, so much attention into this child. And that means I need to sacrifice not being a massive material provider. Like, yes, I have my ways of bringing in income, but it's not heaps. We've got our needs met. And I've, burnt through and had to confront societal expectations. And thankfully, my parents have seen me evolve enough to trust in my own journey and trust that I know what I'm doing. And even if they don't understand it, thankfully, I've got parents like that. But, my outer family, like, they just don't get me. Like, those on the outskirts, like, I'm the black sheep, I'm the rainbow sheep, and I'm cool with that. I'm the psychedelic one. I'm here to bring light and to bring high consciousness to clear this ancestral karma, because we have a family tree. Energetically, we have family trees, and many of us light beings that have already awakened and have been doing the work, usually we're the only one in the family. It's so common that the blood family doesn't get the black sheep or the rainbow sheep, because we've come in to work through the karma and the ancestral patterning of that patriarchal age where the masculine energy dominated. And it's not about men and women suffered from that warring competition, ego, masculine domination. Men and women suffered. So it's not about, I just want to speak to that, because one of the narratives within feminism is that women have been victims through the patriarchy. And it's not about staying in victim consciousness. It's about recognizing that men lost their lives at war. Men had to go off and be away from their family in order to provide. So it's about understanding that men and women have masculine and feminine energies within us. And that patriarchal age is when the masculine energy dominated. And that now we're all moving into well, not all of us, but those that are choosing, those that are choosing to evolve are coming into a state of wholeness and balance within so that this harmony can start to be created without.
I love how you link that into the provider. I feel, and even myself, it's something that I definitely have worked on a lot, and it resonated a lot. And a lot of conversations I've had lately with men have been sort of forced with current circumstances around the world, look at their way they show up as a provider in the relationship. And it's been really heartening and really awesome to hear someone to go, hey, my job or whatever, I can't do it in the current form or all that. I've actually been staying at home with my little kid or this and being present. And it feels so good without them going on this healing journey, without them being in the work and all this. It's just been coming up in conversation, because a lot of what my drive is, it's of the highest importance for me to spend as much time with River, my son, and my fiance Chaitanya. It's my just about number one thing. And I'm providing presence. It doesn't mean that I don't like working and hustling and getting shit done and making money and all that. Steve. Yeah. But it's not my number one thing. I would, if you gave me a choice, you got to go away for the weekend. You're going to have enough money to provide and do the things and have fun. Or you can do this and make a certain amount of money. I'll go away for the weekend. I will. Yeah. Every time. Or, hey, you've got certain things that are happening in the family dynamic. Chi might be going through a bit, or River's been a bit crook. You've got a heap of clients. All right, cool. What am I going to do? I'm going to message the clients and tell the clients, hey, this stuff's going on. And that's the opposite of what my dad was. Total opposite. My dad used to just work. Learned a lot from him, both shitty and good. But he was provider coding he had was, I have to work, I have to go to the job, I have to bring that home all the time. When I'm home, I have to do stuff to keep showing that I'm the provider. I can't just sit and be present. That was the way I seen him anyway. And I think this is for a lot of men right now, and a lot of women, this is great too. It's like a lot of women like, oh, well, I could go on a tangent here. I see a lot of women getting triggered by this now too. Well, if the man's at home, it doesn't mean the woman has to be the provider now or can't do it. What I see and what I feel from Chi, I hold her up. I'm like, you're a fucking genius. You're an amazing teacher. In your, like, when you're in your power, holy shit. And it's not providing, it's just your like creativity, your genius zone. I keep doing that shit. I'm here to be present to that. And if it means for her, just say that it's less time with River and I, then I get to support that if she's really in her flow and all that sort of stuff. Man, it's been such an awakening, so to say, for me on prioritizing presence. I think that's what it is for my family. I think when River was born, or even before that, and like, I think that's when I had the most challenges was before that, where it was the relationship and that, but it was like preparation. But as soon as I was present without having to fix, as you say, like to do something or that's broken, or just being present to it, to grow through it, to understand it. That's when I started navigating life better. And I think that's when life, although there's been lots of challenges for me, it's been more fun. It's been lighter. It's been, I felt more whole. I think that's probably, Yeah, I just had to share that, man, because it's so important for men out there. Again, going back to the intention of Wild Man Revolution, I think that sums it up.
That's what I was going to say. Like, this 60 back to what we shared at the start. Like this revolution, it comes from men being willing to say no to the status quo, and the status quo up until now has been men spending so much time away from their families in order to provide all this material shit. Like the societal program is like, you're a man and you're a provider if you've got like the big $80,000 ute and you've got the big fancy home and the the big fancy boat and
been there,
the shack. And I know you have. And so many men have, because it's the status quo. It's what's sold to us as being successful. And the revolution needs to come in the evolution of our consciousness and realize all that shit is coming from ego, and our children suffer the more we are in ego, because it's about me and about me looking like big status man. Look how fucking who I am, and big. It's about coming
the trigger for my awakening. I had all that stuff. I had duplicates of that stuff, but I was single, lonely, and unhappy.
Yeah.
And I'm an energizer bunny. I had no fucking energy. I was burnt out. I'm like, what the fuck's wrong? So I really got a slap in the face for that. Yeah. And like, as I then started my healing journey, all that stuff I noticed fell away. It fell away. The attachments and all that. And hey, I'm all for material things. Men out there, if you want an awesome car or an awesome house and stuff, that's cool. But what you may find, if you're a single guy, when you get into a relationship or family, or you're wanting to have a better relationship or a more fulfilling life, that's not the main focus. It's not. It's short-lived a lot of the time in my experience. But if it complements, I think that's the thing too. Like, I think that's been my journey. If it complements, like I had the $80,000-$90,000 cruiser, still part of me that I'm healing from letting that go. But I sold it so I could go to Peru. Yep. Healing. It was so much more important. So yeah.
And yeah, I'm with you, Steve. I'm like, I still would like a really nice fancy car. Like it's in my manifesting thing, but I'm not attached to it. Yeah. Like my sense of identity and importance isn't attached to it. Like I'm still happy to drive Greer's Camry around, like, because I don't identify with it. It's a fucking car.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I'd like a nice one. Like, and one day I'll welcome that in and woohoo. But it's not going to come at the cost of me spending time and presence with my son. Yeah. And, you know, for me to be present, I need to also be responsible for having my needs met, because I can find it really tough to be present with Kaizen if my needs aren't being met, if I'm not feeling like a sense of purpose, or like I'm contributing, or I'm healthy, or whatever. So I also am very responsible in ensuring that I'm meeting my own needs so that I can be fully present and engaged and, you know, welcoming and open-hearted with him.
Yeah.
So it's
the same in relationship too. I'm the same. This is where, going back to having more of an understanding in the relationship, she can feel and tell when I need a break. Now, it's not a break from the relationship. One of my things that I do to fill my energy bucket is to go out into the bush for 3 days by myself, do my thing. So she'll be like, hey, and it'll be, the evidence will show up. It's like, I can't be present, or I'm constantly in my head, or I can't focus, or I'm bringing more things in to do to fill my time because I'm disconnected and this sort of stuff. But that comes from the understanding too. And it comes back to it, and having the courage in a relationship for me, like something cheese, like, what are you doing? Like, when early on in the relationship, why do you need to go to the bush by yourself? What are you doing? Like, going camping in the bush and going fishing. Like, trust was building in the thing. And it got to the understanding, she doesn't need to know what goes on. She just knows that that's really good for me. That's it. That helps me be more present because I'm feeling full. It's just one of the things. Yeah.
And that's a sign of a really healthy relationship, that, you know, you're not relying on her to meet that need of whatever that's the bush is giving you, you know.
Bush is the best.
Well, again, it's that wildness. It's there's an intrinsic wisdom and an energy that we yearn for in nature. And I want to bring it back to that, what we're talking about, evil, if you spell backwards, is live. It's because anything evil is an inversion of what's true. So a lie is an inversion of what's true. And what we have as a society is disconnecting us so much from nature. We have all this tech, all this pharmaceutical paraphernalia, all of this distraction from what really taps us into what is true and whole and fills us up. You know, this wild revolution. I love it, Steve, because the revolution is transcending that social matrix that siphons our life force energy, takes us away from our families. Like you were saying, you're the energizer bunny, but you were drained. You had all this material stuff, but you were unfulfilled. It's because what we have around us, like, yeah, there's some conveniences, but at a spiritual level, at an energetic level, it is so draining because it's a slave system. And in order for us to step up, we've got to have the courage to pull out, withdraw ourselves from our system, rewild ourselves, become whole and balanced, and we step into that self-responsibility, that autonomy that is the sovereign king coding that as men, our women are yearning for, and they love, and they're magnetized to it. Our children feel safe and protected in that sovereign king energy. And it's the system that tries to dull us down, that tries to siphon our energy, that tries to keep our consciousness at a stage where we're giving our authority over to some authority figure outside of ourselves. We're consenting to being told what to do, but even if it's on a micro scale of a boss, or we can go into the macro of the governments or whatever. You know, as we wake up and grow up and we become autonomous, we are taking responsibility for our lives, for our emotions, for our needs. This is that sovereign king energy, and we are in touch with our true nature. We're in touch with the wisdom of the earth, and we emanate that naturally.
Yeah, I love that. And I think right now, a bit of a distortion of that, what I see a lot manifest from women and men is like, oh, the alpha males need to step up. That's what they're scared of. No, it's what you just said. That's there. And it's not about what they're scared of. Doesn't matter. We've just got to take that personal responsibility. And a big part of it for me and the king energy and everything like that is like continually like growing through the relationships, continually improving. I look at my life as my kingdom. That's how I describe it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So even the way I focus on the identity of me as a king in my kingdom, it's functioning in a way where that's the core, not outside of myself first. I need to be something against that. No, it's like, hey, I'm building the walls of my kingdom strong, my boundaries, my values, my virtues. And then what I do in my kingdom, which by the way, it doesn't have physical walls. It's like I can be anywhere. If I'm journeying or if I'm going to the bush, it doesn't matter. But it's like that kingdom, it starts from here, like that king energy with me, and it emanates from there. That's what it is.
Exactly. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that it's an inside game. And the more we do our inner work, we're doing our shadow and we're cultivating that sense of full responsibility, sovereign king energy, then it's also manifested externally. Again, this is the great work. You're doing the internal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is awesome. I'm loving this. I love how we could spin it on 100 different tangents. But
you see, like, there's so many different threads, but they all come together to create a tapestry of what's going on with the truth, with the great work, with everything.
Yeah, and I think the thing with a lot of, and again, talking to a lot of men who are probably listening to this for the first time, it's like, oh, I've never dived into this, or I don't really understand much of what you're saying, but they might resonate with like the king energy or sovereign and everything. It's coming up a lot more now for people that they're hearing about and stuff like that. I think one thing that I know with my journey as a man is the simple things to grasp to start with. That helps me the most. Like, so if I'm not feeling like I'm grounded or in my center, or I'm feeling like I'm in my king energy, or I've got a kingdom, I don't feel that. Where would you encourage or invite a man out there to start to maybe saying get to work scares a lot of men, but at the same time, something to really put focus and attention to? Have you, where would you encourage or invite someone new to what they're hearing now? It's like, I want this kingdom you're talking about, all right? I want to feel like a fucking king.
Well, I would say that they're going to be on two sides of a spectrum. They're going to either be too passive or they're going to be in that tyrant energy. So if you're too passive and, you know, your wife's always telling you what to do, your boss is always telling you what to do, then it's about you actually taking back a bit of autonomy and creating some boundaries, going in deep into your values. What do you really value? Why are you here? Like, what's your purpose? How can you be of service? What lights you up? What are you passionate about? Where are you giving away your power to do things that take you away from that sense of purpose, passion, mission, service?
Sounds like you've been watching all my live streams lately.
Steve, if I watched all your live streams, I'd be inside all doors all day.
Funny. Do you know, it's interesting, and I've got some great books that I read and listen to and stuff like that. And what you're talking about there, where to go. Look, I really encourage every man out there. I'm listening to this again now. It's the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That has been actually, when it goes into archetypes and that, the breakdown of it's been really, really simple. And that's why I'm revisiting again. So any men out there listening, it's one, you can get it on audio, paperback if you want. Reading's great, but sometimes it's like, yeah, have a listen to that to really start to dive into the understanding. Because you mentioned the tyrant. And I'm like, I really resonated with,
That's the other side of the passive. So we could go swing to either like too passive, or we can be too aggressive, too tyrannical, too dominating, too like really critical of your woman or your children, or like really judgmental, like, oh, fuck all these, whatever. Like, it's the tyrant. It's that patriarchal energy within the man's body, and it's just a overheated ego is the word that comes through. And it's like, okay, so if you, and the irony is a man that's like that probably already thinks he's the king, but he's not.
I like the key word. He thinks he's the king.
Yeah. He already thinks he's the shit. I don't need to listen to those fucking clowns. What do they know?
Yeah. Exactly.
So they're probably not.
There was an element of that in my working life when I was like a supervisor, and there was a huge element of that where
What's underneath that, Steve, is a wounded inner child who has to put up this big macho facade because he's so afraid of going into the pain of his wounded inner child that probably had a really narcissistic, abusive father, and so he's created this shell, this strong macho persona, because to be anything other than that meant condemnation or getting hurt.
Yeah.
So there's, if you know, or you are a man there's in that tyrannical energy, it's because underneath that is a wounded inner child. And for me, also, my inner tyrant came out when I feared my own power. And to go back to that step parent dynamic, it was so tricky for me because I'm not their father. It's like, where's my role, like within creating boundaries and discipline and stuff? And if I feared coming in with my strong masculine energy, because there's fear there, I'm like, it gets like, I either shut it down to the point where it comes out and it's like too aggressive.
Yeah.
And so I had to like just be okay, like do the inner work to be okay with my power, so that I don't actually have any fear associated with that power, so that when it comes out, it's firm, but it's not aggressive.
Yeah. It's such a really, I think, again, for me, it's why I'm diving further into that again, the different aspects and the archetypal aspects and that. I don't think we'll dive into that today. We might save that for another podcast, but it's so relevant. Again, this come back from like asking the question, like, where can men who are just like start now? Because the other thing that I feel a lot of men, and I hear it a lot, so I'm glad they're expressing, it's like, well, I don't know what to do. I didn't know other men were doing this. Actually, it was a story of mine for so long. Even though I started in a men's empowerment program, after that, it's like, where are all the men? I don't know, how do I take it to another level with men and all this? And it's almost like I wasn't available to see that other men were doing this stuff. But again, one of my intentions of putting this together is, always, you guys are going to see the men that are doing their work in the world, but living their life as well. And you're going to hear totally different perspectives about the same shit. You are. Yeah. Like for here listening to Aaron today, he's very wise. He's very fluent with his communication. But I promise you, I'm going to have some guests on there where we're just going to be talking about chopping wood and shit. And it's going to be fuck this, fuck yeah. And it's going to be about the same stuff. So follow on in this journey, guys. I'm sure this would have sparked a lot of inner, like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to dive into that. That's interesting. I'm going to dive into that. Shit, I would like to know more about that. So with that said, how can everyone listening, men and women too, because I know the women are going to tune into this. Like, I think most of my following is women still at the moment, which is awesome. And they'll probably plug their men into it. Another sneaky intention I do have with this. It's a bit more not in their face. It's, hey, just listen to this tonight. But where can everyone get in contact with you, find you, check out your work? Of course, I'll drop some links and stuff down below in this, but yeah, let us know.
Sure. So
yeah.
Either contact me directly on Facebook, Aaron Keith Baldock, Ascension Ways shower and advocate for human sovereignty. Also, Greer and I have just started our own foundation, the Gaia-Christos Foundation. It's essentially about building heaven on earth and creating our, we're just talking about kingdoms. So our own sovereign off-grid communities. And yeah, we're here to birth heaven on earth with the Christos consciousness, which is an enlightened state of being. So yeah, Gaia-Christos.com. You can find us there.
Yeah, awesome. And that leads into one final question. You sort of answered a bit of it with that there too, but one final question. So many people want to know, they want predictions, they want foresight about how the world's going to be or what's going on with it. Now, I add something into this. It's like, yeah, what do you think is going to unfold? But what is your solution to it?
The solution is everything we've spoken about, Steve. It's as simple as that. At early stages of awakening, when I was learning about everything that's going on in the world and also the cycles of time and the spiritual awakening, I was a bit naive and thought, all of humanity is going to wake up. But what I'm seeing now is there's two timelines. You've got the organic ascension timeline where people are rewilding, tapping back into the earth, becoming sovereign, unenmeshing themselves, disengaging from the status quo, having the courage to do so. And then there's the other timeline, which is the artificial, merging with AI, following the status quo, being a corporate slave. And, that's a path to take. If that's what people want to do with their free will, that's fine. I'm choosing my timeline and it's neither right nor wrong. What I see playing out is that there's going to be a continual falling of old structures. And it's this system that I've been alluding to, whether we want to call it the government corporations or the systems of banking and finance or the judicial system or whatever, like the mainstream media and how we relay information, all these systems that we currently connect through and are governed by, a lot of that is going to go through a big upheaval. And if you've been doing your inner work and you've been clearing your fears and you're not afraid of dying because and I say that word know, you're immortal, and I'd rather die living in integrity with my truth than be subservient to something that wants to suck my soul essence. And that's my truth. And I give thanks to the plants that have shown me my immortal true nature. You spoke about mushrooms before. For me, DMT has showed me that there is life beyond this physical plane, and I am more than just my body. So I give so much gratitude for that, because in transcending that fear of death, then they can't use that against me, and their brainwashing and manipulation doesn't work. And so I really see those two timelines as the mastery of fear. Really, those people that are choosing to stay with that sense of safety and being governed over and told what to do, they've been controlled through fear. Those that are willing to be sovereign, be in community, have bodily autonomy, and take full responsibility for their health and well-being, those are the people that are also transcending their fear. So I know that for those of us that are consciously doing the work, that are engaging in the work, we're going to be sweet. We're going to come together in communities. We're going to unify in our collective consciousness and work together, and not have to fight against any system. We'll just simply create our own thing out of the ashes of the old. So I am a radical optimist, Steve, and I always have been. And those that know me know this.
Oh, I like that. I feel I fit into that category now, but it's off the back or as a result of the inner work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really feel that. And the more I go on my journey, I do get people go, why are you so clear and grounded? Why are you giggling when you just talked about some really messed up shit that's going on in the world? I'm like, well, it's not funny, but I'm like, I'm okay with like what's unfolding, because it's got to unfold. Yeah. It's like, it's like, okay. But yeah, man, seriously, what you shared there to finish what has been an epic first edition of the Wild Man Revolution podcast. I appreciate that, because it was just the perfect sort of segue into what comes next. Keep an eye out, everyone listening. I have a man in his early 20s. Seems like I'm surrounded by younger men that are doing the thing, which is awesome too. 30's young, by the way, even though you're wise, Aaron. But yeah, I've got a next one where we're diving into the monetary system and its collapse. So it's a great segue that we've got here, and talking about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. But it is from a young man in his early 20s who is absolutely in his genius zone, Luke Mikic. Keep an eye out for that, or keep a listen out for that. Thank you again, Aaron, for your time today, your knowledge, your wisdom, your integrity, your truth. I really, really would love to have you back on again, because I think we're just, although we're diving deep, it's still scratching the surface. And everyone who's tuned in for this first show, thank you so much. And yeah, if you want to share anything else before we head off, mate, stick's yours.
Yeah. I often finish content that I share on social media as have the courage to be free. And I've had that tagline for about 3 or 4 years now, before any of this tyranny was in our face. And it couldn't be more true than ever. I've just give a little tip of the hat to my former self. Like, yeah, you really knew what was going on. And I meant it in a personal context of, free from burdens and free from limitation. It requires courage, but now as a collective, if you want to be free, we need to be courageous, and it's that inner game.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, brother Steve. I've got so much love and respect for you, man. Ever since you came into my life, there was always a resonance, and yeah, it's just a continued expansion of love, man. I love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.